Part 4. Finally, let's talk about racing. This is the Gasparilla Distance Classic, an annual set of 4 races down in Tampa, Florida, including a 5K, an 8K, a 10K, and a half marathon. Most participants are from the region, but people also travel from all around to take part. So clearly these are all experienced runners, right? Well, actually no. First-timers, casual joggers, rising track stars, and seasoned runners are all taking part in the same events. Sprinters, runners, joggers, run walkers, walkers, and even casual strollers are all going the distance. And this is something that everyone can feel good about, whether they're running 7-minute miles or walking at a 25-minute pace. Just look at the results and the huge variance in paces. Saying this is a race strictly for runners is just patently false. And regardless of how quickly people made it across the finish line, they're also helping to raise money for local charities through the event. And you know what an event like Gasparilla wouldn't survive without? Volunteers! People who have an interest in the event and want to see it succeed. Maybe they're people who support running but who won't be participating themselves. Maybe they're people from the community who just want to help ensure that a local event in their community is a success. Maybe they're interested in indirectly helping support the charities through the event. Or maybe they're just really nice people who felt like donating their time. In any case, people come out in droves to help ensure the races go off without a hitch. And what's that on the sidelines? People are actually coming out to support the racers? What sort of madness is this? Do I really need to spell this out for you? Now let's take a look at the Wild Hog Canoe and Kayak race, a 15-mile downriver race located 130 miles from Tallahassee near Bronson, Florida. Hey, would you look at that? The same general principles apply. Let's look at the results from this year's race. You've got experienced racers, the fastest in Florida, clocking in at around 2 hours. On the same exact course, you've got casual paddlers taking their time at over 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 hours. And is that a problem? Fuck no. As long as they enjoyed the event, it doesn't matter how long it takes them to finish. So here's yet another race, a canoe and kayak race in this case, that is definitely not strictly for racers. And regardless of how long it takes someone to make it across the finish line, they've helped to raise money for charity, in this case the Levi Association for Retarded Citizens. And hey, what's that? The event has tons of community support. Look at the shitload of volunteers managing it. Look at all the people who came out just to watch and cheer on the racers at the finish line. Can you guess the total population of the 2 closest towns? Combined, it's 1,247. That's about 0.66% of the population of Tallahassee. So surely, a canoe and kayak fundraiser event race just outside of the state capital should be able to draw about 100 times this crowd, right? So I'd been part of the ACKC for a while by the time the 2011 Ocklawakanee River Paddle Fest rolled around. As I mentioned, after the first race in 2010, we sat around discussing ways to make the event more inclusive. Originally, we had just the 59-mile ultramarathon on the lower river. We added a shorter 27-mile marathon on the upper river. The standard distance for canoe and kayak races is 12 miles, so we added a 12-mile up and back event. We added an even shorter event at just under 9 miles. We were catering to any paddlers with even the tiniest bit of interest. Now, I've taken part in a good number of races, and I have to say, anyone can finish a 12-mile race. Your arms might be hurting, and it might take you 5 hours if you're doing more floating than paddling, but if you really want to, you will finish. And in an up and back course like our 2 short events, you can spend as much or as little effort as you like paddling upriver, and then just leisurely float back to the finish line. And you know what? Sometimes people enter a race and for whatever reason, they decide they can't finish. They turn around before making it to the halfway point and they come back. Or if it's a downriver race, they stop at one of the safety checkpoints. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a common thing. And for a downriver event, it's why the safety checkpoints exist in the first place. Shit, remember the Wild Hog race I was just talking about? 3 people didn't finish this year. Hell, I've even taken part in races and not finished. But you know what? Even if you didn't finish, at least you made it out to the event. At least you took part. At least you got to enjoy the water for a bit, even if you didn't get to enjoy every single mile of it. By the time the 2011 event rolled around, I was already well aware that most of the ACKC were not racers. Whatever the hell that means, since many of the people who take part in canoe and kayak races are not racers. I passed out flyers after the ACKC dinner and told everyone about the upcoming event. Most people didn't even bother to take the flyers, and not a single person from the group either contacted me or registered. So at the event in 2011, It was the same crowd from the year before, the die-hard racers who drove from across the state to take part. There was a silver lining to this. Since everyone was experienced, I didn't have to run safety and I got to take part in the races. I was the slowest one out there by far, and holy shit was it fun. And again, after it was over, while racers and volunteers were enjoying the weather and cooking burgers at the lake, the thing we were all talking about was, what the hell went wrong? How did this amazing regional event, with perfect weather, on a one-of-a-kind river, not draw more people? Over the course of the next year, in preparation for the 2012 event, I contacted everyone.
What do you mean everyone?
I worked out deals with landowners, campsite owners, state parks, sheriff's departments, fish and wildlife, every single business in the area where you could rent a canoe or kayak. We had flyers up everywhere. Every outdoor newsletter in the area, every racing group, including those that had nothing to do with canoeing or kayaking. I was in touch with everyone. Pages of notes, going down the list one by one and following every new lead. In-person meetings, meetings over the phone, even the goddamn Board of Tourism was in support. But for all the support we had, not a single goddamn racer who wasn't already part of the Florida Competition Paddlers showed any interest. We had businesses bending over backwards to help. If you didn't have a boat, we'd rent one for you so you could take part in the race. Hell, at one point it looked like we were going to have a full outdoor expo, but in the end, not a single new racer signed up. So that was all interesting, but you know, we'd had small events before and it wasn't really a problem. I mean, at least we could still have the event. Unfortunately, April is prime racing season, which means some races are going to overlap. Races are usually scheduled about 6 to 8 months in advance, mostly so the organizers can spread them out where they don't all fall on the same weekend. But in April, it just can't be helped, and you're going to overlap with someone. I made sure we weren't in conflict with any races in the region, but there was a big national event that ended up drawing away about a fifth of our expected turnout. Unfortunate, but again, not the end of the world. As soon as I'd said that, disaster struck. There's a dragon boat club in Homosassa that decided to host a canoe and kayak race that year. The state racing schedule had been set for months, and they were on it. Obviously not on the same weekend that we were, because I made sure of that when I scheduled our races. Anyway, with just 2 months until the Ochlockonee races, they had to reschedule one of their dragon boat races for whatever reason, and that bumped their canoe and kayak races to a different weekend, so they scheduled it for our weekend. Oh, and guess what? Their race just happened to be a lot closer to where most of the racers lived. Well, that sure was annoying, but the nail in the coffin was that they had cash prizes. That's fucking unheard of in state paddling events. All those die-hard racers from around the state, guess where they're going? Oh, and by the way, they had a ton of free boats to race in for anyone who needed one. Oh yeah, and they also had a raffle for a boat. Theirs was an actual sponsored event, with actual local support, and there was just no competition with that. Our local event was left with just a couple of local racers. Everyone else backed out. At this point, simply hosting the Paddle Fest was going to lose money for Keep Tallahassee Beautiful. You know, the non-profit organization we were raising money for in the first place. So, understandably, they dropped the event. But we still had all these businesses, agencies, and individuals on board, so we could, in theory, still have an event. The event got passed to another local nonprofit, and the structure, both the event and the charity aspect, were changed to compensate. Now, it was a free canoe and kayak race. You had the option of donating to charity if you wanted to. All we needed were people to show up and take part in the most casual of micro races in the history of Florida paddling events. So, for the ACKC monthly meeting just a few weeks before the scheduled races, I made sure that I was on the agenda as one of the presenters. The month before, I'd made an effort to spread the word about the event, but I had encountered the same resistance from before, so I made sure that my presentation was absolutely catered to this group, and I stood up there for 30 minutes giving it. Yes, I know you all don't consider yourselves racers. Yes, I know that most of you have never even been out to the Ochlockonee River. Well, here's what you've been missing. Here's a walkthrough of every section of river from just south of Georgia all the way to the coast. Here are my best photographs to show you what it looks like at each point so you know exactly what to expect. Here's what the event was like in the past. Here are racers from around the state appreciating something in your backyard, something that you could help even more paddlers become familiar with and enjoy. And here are the details on the race itself. You know what? Forget the term race. You can come out to the river and paddle 12 miles, or 9 miles, or 27 if you're feeling adventurous. Do it at your own pace. If 9 miles is too long, shit, we'll add an even shorter race just for you. We've got complete control over it, and if you want, this is essentially your event. And here's the best part, it's completely free. Just come out, enjoy the weather, enjoy the river. Hell, if you come out, I'll make a donation to charity on your behalf. If you don't feel like paddling, you know, we could use some volunteers, safety personnel, timekeepers, and the like. You just had a presentation on safety. Well, here's your chance to help. And after you're done, join us for some burgers at the lake. Did I mention that I'm personally paying for all the food? It costs you nothing. You know what? You can even skip the race. Don't volunteer. Just come out and have a burger with us at the lake, and I'll still make a donation to charity on your behalf. There was a bit of applause after I'd finished the presentation. A handful of people even bothered to take the flyers home with them. But can you guess how many of the 30 or so people who were there at the dinner either registered, contacted me as a volunteer, or contacted me at all? You already know the answer. We canceled the event. I had to go down the same contact list and let everyone know. They were all shocked. AC Casey had a chance to save this event, the only local canoe and kayak event, by simply showing up. They failed to do so, both as a group and as individuals. And that's when I lost all remaining respect for the Appalachian Canoe and Kayak Club. I'll be back with some final thoughts in part 5. Thanks for watching.